Show.
And co-host Marine Corps Map, coming to you on Monday and Tuesdays in Studio A, noon to 2 Eastern.
And Studio B on Wednesday nights, 10 p.m. to 12 a.m. Eastern, with educational, instructional, information, and situational updates, often with wonderful guests on the current landscape in the U.S. and overseas.
This is a go.
We are with you, side to side, and back to back.
Please join us on Monday through Wednesdays,
as well as other hosts and guests here on Revolution Radio.
We're not gonna take it anymore. That's right, we're not gonna take it anymore. We said we're not gonna take it anymore. That's right, we're not gonna take it anymore.
I'm Reverend Medium Tracy Lockwood, and I'd like to invite you to join me as I discuss life from a medium's perspective. I'll be talking about insights that I've gained through readings, with topics like your guides, angels, animal communication, past lives, our transition, and the afterlife. We'll take a deeper look at the metaphysical meanings of symbols and totems, and I'll give you some practical exercises to help you develop your own natural psychic ability. Join me on From a Medium's Perspective.
The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and FreedomSlips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, FreedomSlips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Well, it's time to stumble down the road with host Bridgette Lynn Dolgoff and co-host Jannie Bridgette as they carry stones, dig holes, and wield their shovels along the way. On Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. This is not a seated event. As they talk, run, stumble, carry, dig, drag, laugh, fight, sing, and pray, dance and kick and scream, and oftentimes fall. Hey
there.
Stone
I am not sure that I'm connected.
Now, here are your hosts for the next 2 hours on carrying stones and digging holes. But I won't be there.
The hell I won't.
Hey there, it's Bridgette Lynn Dolgoff of Carrying Stones and Digging Holes radio show on Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com. We are 100% listener supported. Hold on one second. Greg?
Yeah.
Hey, Greg, hold on one second. I'm doing the opening and then we'll start our chat.
Okay, great.
Hold on one second. Okay, so we are 100% listener supported. We need you to go to the Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, and check out our webpage and click on the old funding area. And we have tons of heirloom seeds that you can buy for any length of time. I think some of them you can even store for up to 24 years or something in a sealed pack. But you can go and find all that. And if you just want to donate, you can do that too. And also our archives are only $6 a month. So if you want to be able to get in the archives and check out all the shows at any point in time, it's only $6 a month. So today, Jannie is on. Yay, we're very excited about it.
I'm here.
She just harvested a massive amount of peaches and sold them all at the farmer's market. And we have but everybody can hear all the doggies in the background because we got horses and cattle doggies going by and then doggies in the yard wanting to go by too. So anyway, it's calming down. All right. So today we're bringing back a guest that we had, Greg Schoen. And I hope I got that right. But anyway, so we had him on, like, I don't know, a month and a half ago, maybe, or 2 months ago. And he came on and was talking to us about the what he was going to call the heritage seeds, or the ancient seeds that the native people, have had for, thousands and thousands and thousands of years. And Greg grows the native seeds and plants. He also helps one of the grandmothers and her seed bank, and he brings the seeds there so everybody can have access to his seeds. He was such an amazing guest that Greg and I, have kind of become friends. Him and Jannie are really good friends. Greg sent me after the show. Oh, and in case people are listening that listen to that show, the revelation was the chin corn. So go back and listen to the old show, but kind of blew my roof, my doors, and my windows out. I think I'm still recovering from it, but in a good way. So Greg had sent me some seeds, and it was a really interesting experience because the corn and the beans that he sent me, they wouldn't actually sprout or come up until it was weird. It was like they helped clear like a whole bunch of deep level emotional stuff here on the property. And I mean, seriously, it made the two other people here like crazy. I mean, like out of their mind crazy. And then it like brought all this stuff, this old stuff, to the surface. And then as soon as it started to pop through, things got a lot more crazier because now other people's stuff was on the surface. And now it's only now, I think my corn now are about 8 inches tall. It's only been in the last week that everything has stabilized. So it was quite a few weeks of, and just trying to get these corn in the ground and all the chaos and everything that was going on, to just get them in the ground. So the thing about these native seeds is I want to convey to people is that, we're not talking about like regular seeds. We're talking about multiple levels that are contained in these seeds. So, and so I'm super excited to have Greg back on, and I know that I'm probably going to learn a huge amount more. And I just want to say that I'm super grateful that Greg came into my life so that I could start to actually really look at seeds and, really build a relationship with the seeds and allow them to work their magic in my life, which is something that, I didn't, I respected them, but I didn't do before. So anyway, with that, I'm going to go ahead and have Greg come on and tell us, he's prepared a whole bunch of new information for us, and he's been working really hard. And so we're really grateful for that as well. All right, Greg, so you're on, buddy.
All right. Hey, so, wherever you guys want to start, I remember at the our last session, question was asked, who owns the seed? If you wanted to start with that, we kind of got into that, but not really were able to go completely with it, I think. So if you want to start with that, or if there's anything else you want to start off with, that's great.
No. I know that this has been something that's really been on your mind since the last show. Yeah. is who owns the seeds from your perspective and understanding. So please share that with us. We really want to hear that.
Well, of course, through time, we all have owned it. And we talked a little bit about the concept of patenting on certain types of seeds, certain varieties. That has been going on for quite some time. And that is mostly things that have been very specialized and developed by plant breeders and in different situations, and there's patents put on some of these. It becomes kind of like intellectual property, kind of like copywriting or software, those kinds of things, because basically people have been working on something in that way. But then when there are some other, and I'm not really an expert or anything on this, But from my understanding, some of the patenting is a little more of a gray area, in which perhaps a company or an individual that wanted to place a patent on something wants to do that for something that has been more or less a part of culture and heritage for quite some time. And there's one in particular. There's a little plant that I heard about. I'm aware of it. It's grown in this country more as a kind of a flower garden ornamental, but over in India they grow it for the seed, and they call it black seed. The Latin name is Nigella, and I think that was one that there was a company that wanted to patent that species, even though it was a traditional medicinal herb in India and other parts of the world there, because it had a certain quality to it, and they wanted to be able to get into the pharmaceutical aspect of it. I may be wrong on if it was that species or not, but it seems like it was. But the concept is patenting of an existing sort of free form species of anything out there is, in my opinion, it's a little bit outside of ethics, and that's an understatement. And then you get into, of course, any of the GMO stuff where they've made those alterations to the crops, to their genetics artificially, not through breeding, but through these artificial means. A lot of that type stuff is patented, and it's out there, and it's in the agricultural industry of that seed, and of course that means that if you plant that seed, you're not supposed to grow it out and save it and plant it again. You have to buy more. That's kind of the whole thing about the patenting. And so, in a way, when they do that, somebody else technically owns it. And then we have to decide, where do we draw the line, in our personal ethics. And I think that, that's where people really need to look at, where you have certain cases like we're talking about, if it's a species that's on its own out there being patented, then you got to go, wait a minute, this is too far. So one of the things that's kind of there is an organization that's out there, and I'm not real familiar with it, but I believe it's called the Open Source Seed Initiative. And it's out there. You could just Google that, look it up, and they support getting seed out there and keeping it in the public domain. And they're doing that kind of work. So there are a lot of really incredible groups of people and organizations out there in the seed sovereignty movement that are doing some really good stuff with keeping people informed and making sure this stuff stays free, it's set free. It's not captured And one of the things that I wanted to, there's a term out there that is circulating out there and probably has been for a while. It's the concept of decolonization, and it's a pretty intriguing when you really think of it. That we have gone through time and history and these different events where certain people in one part of the world will bring an influence to another part of the world, and of course we're all part of that in the last 500 years, the whole colonization concept. But it goes more in a way, I think, in terms of like the colonization can also be economic, and in that realm, when you're into seed that's being bought and sold and restrictions put upon it in that way. And I was saying on the last session about how I went ahead and purchased a particular variety of an Osage heritage corn that was it was in a seed catalog, and I went ahead and bought enough of it to do a grow out, and I'm growing it right now. And I thought, it's kind of like you want to, that particular variety is actually it's called Big Horse Spotted, which is an Osage, an actual family name in the Osage tribe is Big Horse, and that's a really kind of it's hard to get a hold of, that particular seed, and I think those people probably still have it themselves, but I heard it was kind of hard to find. And a lot of these heritage seeds actually go literally to a family name. I mean, it's part of that close of a relationship to a culture and to a lineage. And so I thought, I'm going to get some of this, and I'm going to grow it out, and I'm actually going to be out in that part of the country in October. And I think there's actually a man that I know that lives up in that Osage country up there in northern Oklahoma. And I'm going to get with him and I'm going to say, hey, here's some seed back. Find those people that are in that family. And now they probably have theirs, but I'm just saying it's just the whole thing of like, let's decolonize it and let's get it back into that free form of exchange. And there's another little story I want to tell, but if you all need to chime in right now, go ahead, because there's something that I want to add to that.
Well, one of the things I just wanted to say was that, this is how they starve whole populations. I mean, you kind of went there with the economic stuff, but, when they control the seeds and they take there's native seeds for everybody everywhere. Or native or indigenous or heritage or ancient or whatever people want to call them. And this, when they take all those seeds away, or they burn huge areas, it burns up all their seed collectives. And they, destroy people. And this is how they starve whole countries out. So if you're farmers, can't get seed because the government's all of a sudden, I'm going to be a lot harsher than Greg. But if you're state or federal or government or people who are in control of whether you eat or not, or whether there's a seed supply, I mean, within 6 weeks, they could starve out a whole population if they don't allow seeds to come on so farmers can grow that food. And farmers are not using their own seeds, that they've cultivated, and they're not storing them. And, you think about, just real quick, and then Jannie can talk or whatever, Greg. But one of the things, too, one of the things that, people don't really get is, okay, so when the people who came to colonize America, when they were, starving, they, just kept taking and taking and taking, a lot from the native people. And the native people were giving them lots of stuff, giving corn, they were hunting for them, they were, giving them food. And then I think kind of, on a level that's not talked about in the history books, it talks about how, these colonists, basically went in because they were starving and they weren't getting enough to take. And they, it was said that they took their whole, they had these holes and pits where they'd put their corn seed, for the next year to be able to grind flour for the whole winter or whatever else. And then they have seed that they could plant again. And then these colonists started coming in and looting, all of their, corn stash, which means that you're going to kill that tribe. And those people, because, that's the whole foundation of probably, a good 80% of what they eat. So they've already prepared for like the whole next year, not only all the flour to make corn, but they've also planned out their whole next season of their crops. So when colonists were taking this kind of stuff so that they could make a soup or whatever else from it, and destroyed it all, it caused mass starvation in all those areas, and everybody got sick. Because everybody was hungry and starving. So,
well,
anyway.
I think,
there's
go ahead.
Go ahead, Jannie.
Yeah, a definition. Let's just kind of define colonization, and because it is a fear-based mind. Everyone has to think alike. They can't think different, independence, or and they can't think to the seventh generation. Us tribal people, we were born and raised that we live unto the seventh generation. That seed, which they often call the cash, the Pueblos put theirs way up in the rocks, and they had them sealed with, they sealed them. So that was their cache, their seventh generation, and they knew the power of the seed. And when people become into they lose that consciousness through colonization, that they will always be taken care of by a government or a ruler or something like that. They have lost their oneness, their consciousness of who I am as an individual, because it takes, just like all the kernels on the corn, they're all different. Everyone is different, but they all look like corn, right, Greg? Each one carries its own DNA. Yep. And as the pollen falls on the silk, that kernel, one single kernel, is unique unto itself.
One, yeah.
And I see GMO as colonization. Do you understand? That's what I attribute to that.
Yeah, you're using it in the broad term in that way, and that's kind of where I'm trying to go with it too. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And now a lot of us who understand the trueness and the sanctity and the sacredness and the sovereignty of the seed, no, we don't own anything. We don't own anything. We do it by gratitude, and we do it with an intention that we will tend it, take care of it to the very best of our ability, and we will preserve it. And we give it away in our hands freely, especially to those who are willing to take with the same attitude. Sometimes the seed falls on all kinds of soil, and a lot of things happen. But what I know is nature is powerful, and nature has its own mind. It does what it wants to do. And no matter how we try to colonize, how we try to GMO, nature has its own way, So that's what we're kind of seeing right now is a lot of us have held, the tribes have held, the Pueblos have held, the nations, the countries, India, all these. I'm really familiar with the black seed. I actually take it. The black seed oil. It's very powerful.
Yeah, right.
It's important. It's a very, very important topic. And it's not that any of us know better. We're all learning. As always, we're all learning. We're all getting bits and pieces of it. And we all come together in this great circle. It really is wonderful. So I'm really glad you're back on. I've been looking forward to this. Just to have a nice visit with you, Greg. It's really good. Yeah.
Did we talk about, we're kind of like we're sort of in this vein right now. Did we talk about the work of Vandana Shiva and over in India and what she's been? I mean, she's been one of the great, probably the great champion of the seed sovereignty movement worldwide. Yes. And I want to kind of like backpedal a little bit. The first time I ever saw anything about her was on a documentary about, I think it was called The Future of Food, or it was one of those. And she was on there, and she was in a, back where she, I guess probably at her home base, she had a big set of shelves with jars of rice, different kinds of rice. Yes, I've seen this. Yes. And she was describing every different quality. She was kind of moving from one to the next, and she was describing each variety of rice as having a different, unique medicinal aspect to it, as well as just for food, because everything's got a little different character to it. And she was going through that and describing that, and it was incredible how that where you go to different parts of the world, you have your foundational type crops that have an incredible amount of diversity that gets lost when you go into the industrial approach to farming and food production. And she was talking about all that on there, and it just when I first saw that, I went, we can't let these codes, which is what's in this genetic code, we can't let this be corrupted. And because when you start to change things with an intent, it's almost like, and I'll get to this when I'm going to talk a little bit about GMO. It's the intent behind stuff. Sometimes we talk about certain technologies and different things, and we go, well, that's not good, or that's okay, or whatever. But I always like to look at what's the intent behind it. And so her work is like she gets out there and doesn't pull any punches at all. I mean, she talks about the big guys and says, look, this has got to go. And so we're all, going on that example of and in her home country over in India, the big situation was some years back when the I call them the M guys. Their name starts with an M, and now they're kind of been bought out by some other people. But the big guys that do the GMO, that are out there, they went into India and marketed a particular strain of cotton, which was spliced with the gene for the bacillus the bacillus, that bacteria that is toxic to like the bollworm or to any little caterpillars or anything like that.
Yeah.
So like we sprinkle that stuff on our whatever, for doing organic gardening. We get some of that. It's BT, bacillus, and we throw that out there get it out there on the plants, and then when the worms come along and try to eat the leaves, they get that pathogen and it kills them. Okay, well they figured out one of the first GMO alterations was getting the genetic code for that toxin that's in that bacteria and splicing it into, a plant, so that now that plant carries that ability to create that toxin. So if the worms eat that, they are affected by it. So they did this with cotton, and they got that particular strain with that gene that was transferred from that bacteria. And then, of course, it's patented. And so they went over to India and said, okay, we've got something that's superior. It's going to be resistant to any of these insects that are bothering your crops. All you got to do is sign the contract. And at the same time, they said, you also have to give us your old seed. Okay?
Right. Yes.
They said, this is going to be wonderful. Everything's going to be great, and it's going to be happy. So you had all these farmers, and that's a deep tradition, the growing of cotton. We all saw the movie about Gandhi, and it was about when he was doing his protests, and they were spinning cotton to make cloth, and it was kind of part of the protest was home spinning your own cotton into cloth, or into to thread and making cloth. And so this is not only just a commodity; it's part of their spiritual heritage that goes back. And of course, all these farmers in this huge country that grow their own cotton, that's part of their family lines going back to, all the way back. And so now they have been, a bunch of them were contracted out to this biotech company that had created this patented seed. Said, okay, we're going to, they tried growing this, and there may have been some issues with the climate or whatever, but stuff happened. It wasn't adapting properly, and there was a lot of crop failures for one reason or another. But they were contracted, and they had to buy it again, and then they started going into debt because they had crop failures. Obviously, they didn't have a crop, and then they were having to buy that same stuff again. And so a lot of farmers, in huge numbers, went into debt crisis, and that in and of itself is, certainly a terrible thing. But I think a big part of their dilemma or their, suffering and hardship was because they had been disconnected with the unbroken lineage of their seed that is parallel and runs along with their spiritual life, and they had lost that stream of continuity by going to this artificial seed. It led to a whole lot of people taking their lives. I mean, this is just a kind of a thing that was I believe that's a big part of Vandana Shiva's inspiration is that this was basically a form of genocide. And that's what I'm talking about. Colonization, there's an economic form of it. There's psychological forms of it. I mean, there's the obviously stuff that happened in history with colonial powers going into other native cultures and overriding them and all that. At the same time, there's the subtler forms of it that we allow and see happening to this very day. And it's like, you kind of like lose it there, and you lose those continuities. There was actually an article where I saw, it was just an article that I just happened to catch somewhere, and it was a South Korean rice farmer that was being interviewed or was commenting, and he was saying, and it was in a situation where over there they have gone to a lot of industrial varieties of their rice, and he was like an old-time farmer there, and he said, I can't even find our old kinds of rice anymore. He said, the ones that we have grown for generations are gone. I said, I feel like I'm losing my spirituality. Literally, that was what he said. So it was a real, like a real clear, like, definition of somebody really saying that from what they really feel and what they really know. And so these stories are all over like this, and we want to be able to sort of reclaim that sovereignty. And it's like Jannie was saying, it's not so much that we own it or not; it's that we have the sort of, it's part of our culture and life, and we have the use of it, and we can exchange it, and we can move it around without having any type of other authority saying, no, you can't do that. And so it's interesting stuff. If y'all want to go talk from now, I keep getting back to some of this, but keep going. Yeah. Whatever you want to say there.
There's just a couple of thoughts, when I started kind of walking, this path, it always goes back to, all my relationships, all my relations, and how I relate to everything. And so, when we're dealing with like ancient seeds or people where these seeds, they were their family, they were their friends, they worked together. I was just looking up on the internet, because I'm terrible at ceremony song. I'm terrible at learning language, and I'm just really horrible. And I wish somebody would help me with my drum beats, because they're really bad too. But I was looking online, and so I was just looking at when the people, that are cultivating their family, they wouldn't want to sell, their brother or their sister or their child, which is like how they would view like their seeds or the corn. But anyway, it's a big deal. Just the little bit of research I did, because I want to learn more about the corn ceremonies and stuff like that in the future. But, they have a song, like a ceremonial song, like a corn song, just to wake the seed up, to take it out of the storage. And, they probably smudge it. They do all kinds of stuff and have like a ceremony. They'll have a song, which is like a prayer that's very, very old technology to activate, the corn. Then they have like a planting song, and they have ceremonies around that. And then they have grinding songs and ceremonies about that. And then a lot of this is going to be done by the women. The women were the ones that would do a lot of this stuff, hand grind it and sing to it and talk to it, and they would do it together. And think about that going into your stomach, like all those kinds of prayers and goodness. And then, at the end, they may have like a corn dance, which is like the harvest and the celebration, before the close of winter, where everything goes back and, hibernates and then comes back out. So there's like a lot of this goes back so long ago, that the technologies were given to these people and how to activate, these medicines and their relations and to change how things change. So anyway, I just kind of wanted to add that in because it's kind of like been something I've been really thinking about lately. In my mindset is the technologies, and the technologies are the corn, and it may not look like a machine to people. The technologies are stones that they use to change the weather, and some of these stones had been handcrafted and energetic technologies, and they're passed down the family line. So each person that gets the stone knows how to like work it for thousands and thousands of years to. I know this sounds far-fetched, but this is the honest to God truth. They can change the wind, they can lower it or upper it, just depending on how they're dialing in the areas on these stones. And those are real technologies. They don't have mechanical parts. They're not going to break, but they're also not going to work for people who don't know how to utilize them or who have been trained. That's why a lot of this knowledge is really important, that we talk about, because, the indigenous people really need to return, and the original medicine is what I call it, surface, and all be willing, to learn how amazing some of this stuff is, because it goes way back farther than the pyramids. It goes way back than the, white genetics. So it goes back to when this whole planet started. So anyway, those are just kind of things that I think about that I think, are extraordinary. It is extraordinary that we can actually grow a piece of corn, but I would give Jannie a couple minutes if she wanted. And then Greg, continue on to your next, what you want to do.
I have thoughts in there. But one of them is to take your seeds out of the package. Don't let the package is really important. It keeps them contained. It gives you information. It gives the history, gives you the dates. But don't just go from package to soil. Pour it out on your hand and look at it, examine it, even taste one or two. Look at it, see what it looks like. And as a seed grower, although I'm a small niche grower, I want to know what my chicory seeds look like. It might be new to me. I want to know how that forms behind the flower. I want to know when it's done. You understand? So there's that whole, and Greg was talking about that they took their native, those were their brothers and sisters from generation to generation, that rice was, they knew every grain. They knew every plant. When you plant it, you know each plant. You're connected to each plant. And you have things for each plant. And I saw that same thing too. And it's on Seed, the documentary, which is really good. And she's on that. She was on that. And I thought, what coerced them to do that? I think it was peer pressure. I think it was multiple pressure to have, that it's okay. Look at they're doing it. Daddy, look at there. I would really like to have that television or that cell phone. And if you did that, I would have more money. And we could have, you see and for to someone, they are not all sold out. Not everyone did that. And it was the women who hid the seed. It was interesting. Back to the history, and even she talked about one's daughter who lost her father to drinking the poison. From that whole scheme there. And, they held it in such regard. Are we strong enough? You have to be mentally and emotionally and spiritually strong. And when the coercion comes, the pressure comes to succumb, that you don't. You understand? You guys get it. And I think it's starting to catch on, that we don't have to succumb. I lived many years without a cell phone. I only use it because my daughter put in my hand and said, we want to know where you are. And it has opened wonderful doors. But if it went away, I could live perfectly happy without it. I am not coerced to take it or under its power of addiction. That need, just like a fear that we're going to go hungry until we better cook all the oatmeal, or we better steal all the cornmeal. because they're just nothing but pagans anyway, they don't believe in God. That whole mind thing goes on with this. And all these little things keep dropping in and dropping in and dropping in until people literally, in my opinion, lose their minds. Yeah. So we need to be strong enough, and when we share, we need to be able to share, and we don't get dogmatic. We share the power and the love of the seed, and I'm the love girl. I always go back to that center core. It's all about the love, because I will do anything to protect things I love, people I love, animals I love that are within my consciousness, and even those I don't know. I think it's the biggest power that we have, and it keeps our minds right. When we connect our mind to our heart, and then it comes out in our actions. So, there's a lot we're up against, especially right now, because we're just bombarded with information. How do we sort through all of it? Well, we sort through it by staying within our heart. And we open that pack of seeds, and we look at them. I just talked to Greg a couple of days ago about some new seeds that someone gifted me. And I was reading the package because I didn't know the information. The company was conscious enough to really put some good history on it. And I got to look at it. It was also a chintz. It was big. It was beautiful. It was red and brown. Just looking at each one. And even though he was on the phone, we were both totally into the seed I was talking about. So that is a connection. You can call us nerds. I call my own self a nerd. It's kind of my funny little word, and it kind of, tells us who we are within each other. But we really are. We carry a big piece, and we carry the piece for the seventh generation. We're carrying a piece for the future. What we're doing is not small. This is big. Our futures and our children and our grandchildren are depending on us and how we're living and how we treat the seeds. Because we want them to have food, and we want them not to just take it. We want them to have the consciousness that we have, and the love and the history of knowing that this seed is sovereign. This seed will do what it needs to do. And it is showing up like crazy, Greg. You know that. I mean, land races of wheat and rice and corn. The hidden ones are coming up. It's just like wonderful magic. Every day, more and more comes up, and it wants to be seen now. Do you understand? I think it hid because it was being protected, but it wants to be seen now. It wants us to hold it in our hands, and it wants to go into the soil, and it wants to reproduce and grow for us. It's important. Yeah.
And it wants to heal
which
the
way
earth.
To go, too.
It wants to heal the earth.
Does.
Yeah, no, it's a traveling seed, right? It goes wherever it's supposed to go. Oh, and the seed that Greg sent me, I spliced it out. I ended up splicing it all but the certain corn. But I sent it out to 5 different people in the mail. So those seeds went on like quite a trip among the ones that I also planted. But anyway, so I'm new to I'm not new to seeds, but I'm new to a deeper understandings of seeds. So I'm really appreciative of my new understanding. All right, Greg, so we have about 10, 11 minutes before we go to the break, the first break at the top of the hour. So where would you like to go now?
All right. Well, we were talking about, the colonization type idea. And, we all know about quinoa. Quinoa is that grain that we've been working with and getting to know. And that was traditionally over there in South America and all through the highlands of the Peruvian, Peru and Bolivia and that whole area. And, of course, that became known out here up in the U.S. And one of the things that happened when we started wanting that grain is that the traditional people down there that were growing it for their own staple crop, then all of a sudden it's worth a lot more being sold outside than used right there where they are. And so people that were trying to grow their own traditional food crop then said, well, I can't just put that in a pot and cook it. I can sell it for so many whatever, and it sort of disrupted it was an economic disruption by the fact that they could get a lot more by just going into the market like that than using it as part of their traditional food. And so it's kind of like things get, we're doing everything so in such a far-reaching way with these trade entanglements and everything that we forget about what happens right here at home or right in our own region. And
right.
And that's kind of a thing we all have to. We're facing a lot of that right now in the world. We've gotten entangled with other countries in ways that just aren't very healthy, and we need to sort of back off and go, okay, let's be a little more self-reliant here. And that goes with the seeds. That goes with the product of the seed. And I feel like we all can do our part in our own communities and be aware of that. And anyway, we've got a couple of minutes. Anybody want to comment on that?
So
I'm going to wrap up this particular segment here. Yeah.
As a prepper, or a person that's been prepping for a while, one of the things that I kind of got early on was if I bought seed, I could always sprout it. So in 2 days I have food to eat, and something like a cup of sprouted grain or beans or seeds, it's like more nutrition than most people eat in 2 weeks. So you could literally live off of a cup of really good sprouts. So, but the multiple thing is, like, I can sprout them, right? I can soak them and sprout them, or I can soak them and cook them, or I can just soak them and eat them that way, or I can put them in the ground, and I can grow a plant, and I can, take parts of those plants as they grow and eat what is edible. Like, I think Armoth, right? It's another thing like quinoa, but you can eat the leaves in the salad, and they grow huge, tall stalks, and the leaves get really big. It's like a whole salad, like one leaf. So,
yeah.
You can also eat them as they go along.
Quinoa and lamb's quarters are like cousins, and you can eat the foliage from the quinoa plant. If you got to be in a little cooler climate to grow it well, and then like it.
Amaranth is one of those.
Amaranth, all that, yeah.
But so the thing is like, seeds are good for everything. And even if you're going to like prep or, and they're nutrient dense, and you can do multiple things with them as a food, at different stages of their development. I don't know. I'm not really sure there's anything else like that on Earth. Is there? I don't think there's anything of equivalent to a seed. Maybe like beehives or honey, something like that. Well, I don't know. Anyway, it's something to think about. But anyway, go ahead, Greg. What else we've got?
We were talking about the amaranth. It was an interesting thing that back when I first heard about when grain amaranth, some of the big grain type amaranth strains started kind of hitting the popularity back when the Organic Gardening magazine was really pushing it. Right. And one of the stories, and this is back in the 80s. They were, so I was able to grow a bunch of that. It was really a lot of fun. The stuff gets huge. And, but there were the stories about how back and they pop that. You can pop that grain too. They do. You still see it. If you go down to some of the Mexican markets, they'll have bags of that amaranth that's been popped. It's really good. But that one was during the original colonization of Mexico. The Spanish authorities were forbidding the native people growing their amaranth because that was such a life-giving, vital food source for them, and on a lot of different levels, that they felt like they could sort of circumvent the native sovereignty by forbidding them to grow the amaranth. Of course, that's such a tiny seed that just a tiny bit of it sewn into the cloth of the hem of your dress, could be carried and all those hills and valleys of that. I mean, that was something you could never extinguish, and so we still have it. But they tried. And it's kind of an amaranth. Yeah, it's an amazing. They grow a lot of it in northern New Mexico for a lot of different for the red dye and for the seed
Right.
and everything here too. Yeah.
I think that's how they pay their taxes in Peru,
Wow. No kidding.
with the Peruvian amaranth. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that needs to be
Well, they do
taken
all kinds
apart.
Cakes and different
Yeah,
things out of it. Yeah.
right, yes. Are we not at our time? Because I have a quote from Gandhi I'd like to share before we're out of
There you
time.
go.
Yeah, we got like about 5 or 6 minutes. So yeah,
Oh,
go ahead
okay.
and
Okay,
slap it on us.
it's a really, I love this quote. It's a quote from Gandhi, and it's, first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, then you win.
Yeah.
So, we've gone through all those phases.
Well, we could go from Gandhi to one of the people that was inspired by him, Martin Luther King, who said, without vision, the people perish. I believe that was one of his quotes. And I'd like
Right.
to say we really need to in our country, our people here, is to reclaim a sense of vision and purpose, and really become solid with that. And of course, working with the seed is an incredibly strong pathway to finding that. But it can go through a lot of different ways. I mean, but just finding that sense of vision and purpose, and coming together in that.
Right.
And that would be a good thing.
It would be a very good thing. And it's happening every day. I meet somebody new. Like I met 3 new families today at the market that have bought property, that are starting to learn, who are, wanting to go off grid, wanting to grow, wanting to join hands. And it's wonderful. It's wonderful. And it gives me hope. It really does. And it keeps me going. It keeps me wanting to keep going.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Are we
so
still
hey,
here?
I'm here.
Awesome.
Hold on. So I was my friend Dr. Lenny Time. Anyway, he's listening to the show, and so he Skyped me. But this is what he said. He wanted to kind of put in his 2 cents about what he's doing with amaranth. He said he lives on 40 acres, and so I worked with him when I was there on the land and built him cold frames and started him off. And so now he's like really accelerating with just planting stuff. I mean, most of it's wild crafting, which is really cool. But he says the elk and the deer hit the amaranth hard this year again. They are already struggling for forage, hitting my garden hard. I decided to grow for them as they are really hungry now. I mean, isn't that like just the greatest thing? Like, he's decided that he better get some more stuff in the ground, so that he can keep, because I think on their property, they get a herd that comes through there, and there's like 17 of them.
Yeah.
Right. Well, the native way is portions. It's done in thirds. 1/3 for you, 1/3 for family and friends, and 1/3 for nature. So, there's the bird strikes on the peaches, then that fall off, then I leave. There's the ones I give away, and there's the ones we use. So when we keep that 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, it keeps us all in balance, and it keeps the circle going. It really does. I love that whole concept. It's really good. And so sometimes the deer take more than their 1/3. And that's all right, because amaranth makes a lot of seed. It will refeed itself as they're out there eating it. So that's what I find. I have amaranth growing everywhere. In fact, my neighbors complained. They said, "What is this weird plant growing in my yard?" "Oh, it's amaranth. Don't worry. It won't hurt you." It's pretty. When I call it my heart lies bleeding, I think that's the ornamental name of it, or an ornamental variety. They know what it is. They're okay. They're cool with it. But when I call it red amaranth or Hopi amaranth or gold amaranth or Peruvian amaranth, whatever name is with it, there fluxes their little brain a little. But once they know that it's okay, then they're all right with it. And once they look at it, it is a beautiful plant. What a beautiful plant. Stunning. Yeah.
So, all right. So let me do this. So in case people are listening and you don't know what you're listening to, you're listening to Carrying Stones and Digging Holes, a radio show on Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com. And we're getting ready to go to break at the top of the hour. And then we're going to be back to further discuss what we're discussing. And we have Greg Schoen back on. I call him my sacred seed guy. And we are having a discussion about seeds and his experience and what Greg wanted to bring to us and talk about today. So we will be back pretty soon with that. All right. So, hey, anybody got a song they want to sing? You have a corn song, Janie?
No, I'm a terrible singer.
Come on.
No. Don't put me on that spot. I'll embarrass I already sound like I've been sucking on helium anyway.
That's funny. That's super funny. All right. So we're getting ready to go to commercial. And then we will start back with some other topics that Greg is going to bring to our attention about seeds. So thank you. Be right back.
See you later.
See you in about 5.
Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
Enter into a world unseen on Raven Star's Witching Hour. You will encounter eclectic topics from the realm of spirit brought into our matrix of truth. With your host, the Solaris Blue Raven. Solaris will bring you an array of unique guests covering topics from ghostly spirits to amazing anomalies, covert technology, UFOs, and shadowy global events.
And that's right here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, Saturdays, midnight till 2 a.m. Eastern Time. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
Let the magic rise.
Join me weekdays for my new show, Tell Chris Joe. It's going to be a problem show brought to you live from Kensington. Thursdays, I'm dealing with hot topics, heated debate, what's new around the world, and ring-ins to discuss listeners' problems and offering considered and heartfelt solutions. So join me, Chris Hart, for Tell Chris Joe. Stop what you're doing, grab a cup of tea, and coming live from Kensington. Relax, let me entertain you with a coffee bar online. Listeners' very personal problems. So that's Thursdays, 2 p.m. in the afternoon, Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. See you there. It's going to be lots of fun.
This is Barbara DeLong, host of Nightlight Radio, inviting you to join me on a cosmic journey, exploring a metaphysical montage of spiritual material, covering everything from the mundane to the magical, UFOs to unicorns, and everything in between, including spiritual readings for those who seek enlightenment. Let Nightlight provide you with equal measure of light, love and laughter, insight, wisdom, and inspiration. Monday nights, 10 to 12 p.m. Eastern, right here on Studio B, Revolution Radio, at freedomslips.com.
The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and FreedomSlips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, FreedomSlips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Hey everybody, it's Carrying Stones and Digging Holes with Bridgette Lynn Dolgoff and Jannie Vaught. And you can also find our bio on the show, more about our show information. If you go to Revolution Radio, FreedomSlips.com website, you go to schedules and Studio A. And then it'll show the time slots for all the different shows in Studio A, and we're down there on Saturdays at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So that's a little bit more information. So today we have Greg Schoen. We had him on before, and you can go back and, you could go to the archives. If you had archives, you can go listen to the last show we had with Greg. I wanted to kind of open the second hour with like a little bit of a brief history about your past, Greg, and how you have come to Seed now. Just, like a really quick one, because you did a longer one on the show before, but give us a real quick one in case we have new listeners, so that they could get a little bit better understanding of you and why you do the work you do now.
Well, of course, as a young person, as a child, I was always, intrigued by nature and water creatures and all kinds of the fascinating things that a little person finds in the world around them, and that kind of colored my life through my growing up and into my adult years. And I always had an interest in gardening, and especially as a young adult. I went to Oklahoma State University, got a degree in horticulture, and pursued a lot of things related to that, and kept it more as a hobby, so that I could pretty much do things, the way I like to do. But in around 1995, I met a fella out there, and who was part Cherokee, who introduced me to the inner side of working with the seed. And he was a person that his work was repatriating very old native strains of corn that were spontaneously appearing in his fields to different tribes of people that he knew that they belonged to. And it was like reconnecting their lineage and that link back to their origin that they perhaps had lost touch with. And so in the course of befriending Carl, I acquired some different types of seed from him, and the process of getting to know this different corn took me on a journey, and really sort of shined the light on things that had happened to me personally. And it's amazing how the patterns of the intelligence that's in these ancient crops carry some of the wisdom that we're seeking. And sometimes it sneaks up on you from behind and just becomes very obvious. And so in my moving to New Mexico, I became aware of a lot of different people that were doing incredible work with the seed sovereignty movement, especially up in Santa Fe and up north of there, and got to know grandmother Flor de Mayo, who was one of the 13 indigenous grandmothers, if you've heard of that particular movement that was happening. And I have been working with her for about 6 years on a seed project in which we're working with growing these different seeds and getting them to people and educating people. And so that has been giving me a really nice, rich area of purpose to follow. And it's been something that is, and I never sell seed. We in the organizations I'm working with, we never sell the seed. We use it as a means of bringing people to their awareness and to getting them started in a path that can be very rewarding. And so in that way, the value of seeing that happen is much greater than any kind of monetary gain you can get from selling the seed. And of course, we want to keep that memory of those that seed being passed from generation to generation. We want to keep that free exchange going unbroken. And so that's pretty much what I've been standing for. And there's a little more I talk about a little more on the last broadcast, and you could listen to that and catch a little more of some of the things that I spoke about. But that's pretty much it in a nutshell.
Hey, Greg, are you seeing more working with the grandmother? Are you seeing more seeds come up out of Mexico that have been resurfacing?
Well, not necessarily. I would like to start to access more of that, especially a little closer to where I live. You have the entire state of Chihuahua, which includes that's their largest state, and that's basically the one right across from us here, and that includes that whole region of the Copper Canyon, the Tarahumara people, and they have an incredible amount of traditional crops, and a lot of that seed has found its way to here by different people who've explored it and engaged with those people and their seed. But being closer, sometimes the seed from further into the tropical regions is a little harder to adapt because it works with the day length of the latitude. And so like if you get some of the corn, for example, or some of the runner beans, we brought some back from Guatemala, and you try to grow it up here, it gets confused by the different lengths of the day that we have, and it may not flower very in time for it to make within our growing season. So some of your Peruvian corns, I mean, you plant that and it grows and grows and grows and grows and grows, and it's September by the time it tassels, and of course that's too late for it to ripen. But if you come up a little further north, perhaps those people in those areas, they may have acquired some of the seed countless generations ago and gradually adapted it to where they are, and they're close enough to here that we could probably. I did get some runner beans from a fella that had gone down there, and they did fine here. But the runner beans that I got from Guatemala took too long to flower. So they have adapted over generations, and so sometimes when you exchange with people that are a little closer to you, you might get something that works.
Yeah, and
so
their native
Mexico
areas,
is a wealth
they're
of stuff.
perennial. Yeah, in their native areas, they're a perennial.
They actually are, yeah.
Yeah, but here their growth is an annual. I've tried to get them to be a perennial by mulching them heavily through the winter, but they can't take that 32 below zero. When you start get below 32, they give up. They can't do it. Yeah.
I actually had a few plants of that Guatemalan runner bean that I grew. I grew it and it never flowered, but I thought, okay, it's gone. And then I actually had some sprouts, so I transplanted. I'm going to see what's going to happen to them, and maybe I'll get something off of those. So anyway, but that is an incredible crop. The one we're calling the Beauty Away beans was apparently found in a cache of seed in the Southwest, and I got some from a lady in Arizona and been growing it. And that one is, apparently those people, of course, traded with people all the way between where they are and Central America over, back in the ancient times, and so they brought a lot of these crops, just like the corn, and adapted it over time as things got transferred further north. And they were just patient with it and worked with it. And so we do have things here. Our Hopi blue corn and a lot of that does, of course, is perfectly adapted to this climate here. And so we have the work of the people that have been doing this for I call it the 300 generations, like when corn originated, and any of these other crops. They've stewarded it and they've taken care of it, and we have them to thank for it being present with us today.
Right. Yes. I think location, your growing areas, which I don't think are really right on anymore. I believe a lot of that's changed with our unusual weather patterns that are happening now, and length of day. And there's this general idea of if you just go to the magazine and you buy the seed, it's going to grow where you live.
Yeah.
And that is probably one of the biggest challenges I have, writing column on gardening, is to get that message across. Just because you have it does not mean it will grow there. And then when they grow it, they're disappointed and they think they're bad gardeners, or they say, oh, I don't have a green thumb. Well, it's just that you weren't growing the right thing at the right place at the right time.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's all those things.
Yeah, and sometimes one of the things in biodynamic, or like the 3, step deal. That's why you can't have like a young farm. Your focus has to be on a really old farm. So it's an organism,
Right.
it's with a membrane on the outside, and it all works, together perfectly. But sometimes you have to grow a seed like 3 times, like grow the plant,
Right.
try to, even if you get one plant doesn't grow very good, get the seeds from it, then plant it again the next year, grow it. And sometimes it takes like 3 times to alter, like the genetics of it for your area. But
I've been trying to do some adapting, growing some native tomatoes under deep shade, because I don't want to eat them. I want seed. Because I want it to be able to grow in my under layer because of the heat problem we're having and the intense sunlight. 103 degrees with blaring heat, it just kills everything. So I'm trying to adapt some tomatoes and peppers and a few other things, some herbs that will produce a seed that will grow in the understory in the model light. And I think if I get some tomatoes off this, I've really done something. Old enough tomatoes that I can actually have viable seed on. So we'll see how that goes here. Because we can adapt on our own. We can take things, as we see some of the weather patterns shifting, we can take our seeds and it doesn't hurt to just take a few and to try them out. Be little scientists, make a little growing space. Try them in full sun. Try them in model light. Try them in deep shade. See what they do. See how they work out.
What you got out there, and what we have out here is mesquite. The tree everybody likes to hate because it's invasive, but it's actually a very incredible. Of course, it grows the pods that we can grind into flour.
Oh, yeah.
The mesquite tree, which, like over where you are, it gets a lot. They'll actually get a lot bigger than they do here because we're so dry. But one of our gardeners where I live has been growing a lot of some of the lettuce, some of the more cool season greens and lettuce and stuff like that under that sort of dappled shade of mesquite trees. And it's been doing a whole lot. She's been getting incredible success with things like lettuce going much further into summer than they normally would, because there's just enough shade from this. It's not like a solid shade. Mesquite has a very kind of a feathery kind of foliage that pretty much filters out the light a little bit, and then becomes kind of like a nurse tree. It creates a little microclimate there, but still allowing plenty of sunlight to grow the plants. And so that's something that people could consider, that particular tree as a as a protector, but still allows enough light through, and it creates that little area of conditions for things especially in your area where it can get pretty hot in the summer. And
right,
that's
I've been using giant zinnias this year as a shade, as a nurse plant, and I love them. They're easy to grow. They're so beautiful, but they will go really tall with their big, wide. They almost look like sunflower leaves when they first come up. And their flower petals are the seed. There's like a little arrowhead seed at the end of that flower petal. So they're easy to pick. As soon as they start drying up, you just pick the head, you have seeds. But I've been really successful with just interplanting zinnias. Who knew? And they're a little bit of a water hog. They aren't much for, they will live in tough soil, so they aren't in a lot of competition for nitrogen with the other plants, but they have been a tremendous asset where I did a really big planting of them along with lentils. I did lentils my nitrogen fixer, and I just got some more organic lentils, and they grew wonderful. I did that with hairy vetch as my ground cover, but, I want to grow nitrogen-fixing plants. So I've been, being a little weird scientist over here, and I have found that I am now really digging zinnias. They have even shaded and protected my asparagus because they don't get it, once the asparagus will bolt and you can't, it goes to fern, but it has held some kind of something, I'm not sure what it is, that the asparagus has not dried. It actually did a second crop. You see, that's a lot later in the year. And the zinnias have just been really friendly. What a friendly, easy to grow, easy to save seed flower. And I just love, oh my God, they're so tough. They look like they're wilt down and dead, and you put a little water on them and they're alive again. They're amazing. So, we don't ever really get the whole picture. It's like I'm growing that last batch of Beauty Way beans you gave me, and I've regrown them, third or fourth time. And what I did, instead of putting them on a straight trellis, I made a teepee tripod out of some limbs I had. And I tied them like a teepee, and I did one little string around the outside so they could catch something. So I had 3 sides to plant on, and they have done wonderful on that teepee tripod, much happier than putting them on a straight trellis. So, you try different things. I really like the teepee tripods in my garden. They're so pretty. But they've done really well. They've been really happy with what I've realized with them. I think they're kind of they like a little wetter, cooler weather, more tropical temperate zone than I'm in. But they they like being smaller plantings, not such a big line of, they do much better, smaller bunches. So the lesson learned on that being, and they are beautiful. Oh my God, the flowers are just stunning. Yeah, they're really pretty.
Scarlet,
Yeah, zinnias, who knew?
Yeah.
All right, Mr. G, what direction do you want to head us on now?
Oh, okay. Did we want to talk a little about GMO at all? Did you want to go there at all? Feel like that's appropriate?
Well, people can kind of look up GMO. But if you want to talk about GMO, it's
just a little perspective, and I can kind of run through it.
Yeah, great.
We look at stuff like that, and of course, it's like a form of technology, and we go, oh my God, this is raising havoc with our crops. They're making these alterations and such. But I go back to I call this GMO good, bad, or indifferent. And I go back. I go back to how my friend Carl he was telling a story about an encounter he had, and he was talking to there was some lady from one of the local churches who was kind of had an opinion about some things, and she said came up and said, Mr. Barnes, and Carl was really kind of like pretty blunt sometimes. He was very candid and, kind of just said what he felt like. So she goes, Mr. Barnes, what do you think that God thought of 911? And he winked his eye and said, probably indifferent. Of course, that wasn't what she wanted to hear. And I thought, we kind of like jump on things and go, oh, this is good, or this is bad, or this is, and we march on Monsanto and all that. And if you take a bigger perspective and you go, okay, yeah, there's some companies out there that are fiddling with the genetics of certain things and putting artificial codes in there and making a lot of money and controlling our seed supply. This is a problem, and there's the ecological thing of like, okay, some of these things are cross-pollinating with a wild species and creating super weeds and things that are resistant to anything that we're trying to control them with. And that's a problem. But if you look back to, we're talking about corn a lot, but it could go back to a lot of the other crops, to its origin, back when corn was still in its early evolution from teosinte, which wasn't that long ago, maybe 8,000 or 9,000 years ago, which is like a blink of an eye in the progression of life on this earth. That's just a tiny blink of an eye. And when that original grass started to kind of call certain people's attention, and they began to select for what eventually became maize or corn. Something happened really, really fast with that. And I remember seeing a mural down in southern New Mexico that was on the side of a health clinic, and somebody had painted a 3-part mural that was basically depicting almost like you see a lot of murals down here that are a lot of people that come up from that there's the influence from Mexico. So some of these people that came from way down there in Central America have a lot of their history they like to put in these murals and paint it on the side of buildings, and it's an incredible particular art form that you see. And one of these panels on this mural showed a little cornfield, and these people were in this cornfield, and there was a lot of legends about deities and extraterrestrial advanced beings and things of that nature that had an influence on the origin of some of these crops. I mean, we look at 7,000 or 8,000 years, and corn being what it is now with all the colors and what it was then. You go, well, maybe we had some help. Maybe there was let's just say there could have been influences that are beyond our current understanding. And in this panel of this mural, it showed this deity, like a Aztec-looking figure, bigger than life, holding his hands out and sending rays of light out into this corn. And there was corn and chilies and different things in this little field. And as those rays were hitting those plants, it showed them lighting up. I mean, this is all in this mural. And then there were some people there on the other end that were bowing down, kind of like, oh my God, we're being blessed by this powerful being. And it was in this mural, and I'm going, it was a beautiful piece of art. And you go, well, maybe in other times there was something like what we would think of as GMO, or modifying things in sort of more extraordinary ways, but perhaps those forces, as it were maybe more in alignment with the plan for the evolution of life, and maybe they were doing it in service of that plan, and not for the purpose of gaining notoriety or money or wealth or power or whatever, but they were doing what they needed to do in in the great process of bringing these crops to human beings. I mean, that's kind of a far out idea, but people talk about things in those terms a lot. And so, GMO, good, bad, or indifferent. What's good, bad, or indifferent meaning? What's the intent behind it? Because maybe in other times, things may have been modified, and they were in alignment with a bigger purpose. And so, but what we see now is things being modified artificially. You know, genetics from a jellyfish or a shrimp or something else being installed into crops, and then those are patented, and those are controlled, and a lot of money is being made. So there's a different intent behind it. And that's kind of the root with all of this stuff that we deal with that's emerging, is it doesn't have an intention that is in alignment and in harmony with the creative energy of life, or is it trying to separate itself out for its own personal or self-interest? And that's where we want to make a distinction, is what's the intent behind it. And we need to also be, you know, we look at things like that, and that's actually kind of a minor thing compared to like the emerging things that we have with artificial intelligence that's going on. And you can chase that down the rabbit hole, get on YouTube and start looking at some of that information. We have things that are emerging so quickly that we really need to find our own inner spiritual center, because as a lot of this stuff sort of takes off in our life and in our world around us, it's going to be pretty overwhelming. You want to get the children really connected good to nature, so they understand the feeling of the, you know, what real things are, and not having them out there too enamored with the digital world and devices and all this. We want to really connect. And so, you know, these different technologies, yeah, they have their use, they have their tools, but if the intent behind any of this is a little bit askew, we need to be aware of that. We need to always return to our roots. And so we're in probably the most bizarre time we've ever been in history, and we're going to just ride this out, you know. And so a lot of these things that happen, maybe certain things have happened in ancient times that were similar, and it's the use of it, it's the intent of it, and if it's the right, if we have the right intent behind things, then we're more in alignment. And if we kind of go off on the other path, then maybe it's different. So, any comments on that? I mean, I'm sure you all, both you ladies, have considered these things quite a bit. Did I lose you?
That's a big subject.
Oh, good.
No, we're listening. I'm listening.
Silent there, and I thought, oh my God, my phone blinked out.
No, you know, because I really believe that Earth is a big library, and and actually natives, off-planeters, those with good and bad intention, because our planet is so rich in water, actually used our Mother Earth as a library, and it's a place that they could plant and put on their stored things. It could be a lot of different things, and with an agreement or without an agreement with the Earth.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of things that are contrary and don't live well here, and they fight and they have issues and problems. But we are a major, major universal library. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. A lot has probably been brought in. I mean, in these abstract ways has been seeded in.
Well, yeah,
before
just have
any
a
time we
comment
can
here.
imagine. Yeah.
Yeah. It brings in all kinds of different elements and different items and minerals and viruses and all kinds of stuff just by getting struck by a little something from the sky. So we are a mini layered planet. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, it's not one thing, that's for sure.
Well, I think a lot of the things that we've introduced, like these alterations, I have a feeling just sort of the harmonic forces of of sunlight and energy from the stars can, just by that resonance, can ultimately help this stuff self-correct. A lot of these kind of little weird experiments we're doing, that stuff will ultimately self-correct. Some of this stuff will go sterile, you know, but we still have to do our part in, you know, trying to keep a lot of this mischief from going on too far. But I think, you know, nature is always self-correcting and adapting, and, you know, maybe we'll come around, but, you know, I think we need to keep our alignment with that self-correction so that, you know, that some of our own aberrations don't lead us to becoming extinct. You know, we need to sort of line up with truth, and because nature's going to get it done. You know, nature's going to comb it out. You know, and we would like to sort of be on the side of you know, what makes it through and not what gets cleaned out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to be on the side of restoration.
Yeah.
Yeah, there we are.
So just a couple things I was thinking about is, one, I watched this video of Paul Stammet, and I forget where he was talking at. It was on YouTube, but he was talking about how there's like scientific proof now. And Paul Stammet, for anybody out there, he's the mushroom man, and he knows everything about mushrooms and fungi and mycelium, and, you know, has tons of lectures that he's given. And so do yourself a favor and get to know him on YouTube.
Yeah.
But one of the things he was talking about was that that there's now scientific proof that mushrooms were not from, that were here, that they were put here, because they're noticing, as more mushrooms are starting to grow and develop again, that there are actually like spores and going out into the atmosphere. And I guess they have some kind of technology. They actually see it like poof, 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 leaving Earth. And he said, like, you know, in 1 billion years, you know, maybe this mushroom stuff will, you know, secrete its way, you know, to Mars and like start to be, you know, begin to re-terraform it, which is like, wow, that's pretty cool kind of idea. And then, so the other thing too is, like, we have to remember, like, everything we do is affecting everything, even, you know, like, you know, in the Zen Buddhists, you know, they have to wait like 200 or 400 years to see the outcomes of things, right, before they really kind of evaluate it, or, you know. So if you say, hey, you know, to a Zen traditional Zen Buddhist, you say, so, hey, what did you think, you know, like the, you know, the impact of Hitler and all of this stuff was? And they would say, you know, it's way too early to tell, you know. So we are living a short fragment here, but we are impacting the future, billions of years into the future, out into the cosmos and maybe even other planets, with not even understanding that. And we're also at the apex where we're also changing the past, which I think is a pretty important thing.
Well, and we're on radio, and so our those waves are going out. And, you know, if you saw the movie Contact and how that reached that particular star and they sent it back to us. And so what we're saying now is going out there.
Yeah. And so this is another thing that I really liked the other day. Like, I am opposed to transhumanism, you know, people as machines and things like that. I'm pretty opposed to all of that whole thing. But, you know, when I was living in Taos, and sometimes I go on to the Taos Pueblo, and then sometimes, you know, they'd send the medicine men in to do prayers for any kind of opening event, you know, that I went to in Taos. And one of the things that the medicine men from the Pueblo, or Taos Pueblo, would talk about is they would talk about the creator as or the God or whatever else as a great computer in the sky. And I remember, like, in 2006 when I first started hearing that, and I was thinking, you know, with the AI on the planet, you know, I've been pretty against that. But I listened to this video the other day, and the woman said to me, or she said on the on the video, she said, "Hey, I don't want the AI to hate me. Like, we know that there's an AI. We know that it could go in a bad direction depending on who is feeding it, but and she said, so I tell the AI that I want to be its friend, that I'm, doing good things in the world, and that maybe the AI will help assist me to do the good things in the world." And I was thinking about, it goes back to this whole computer in the sky thing, and what we are programming the AI with. It's just the computer in the sky, right? It's the creator of all things in this world. And maybe we have some input by telling the AI that, we don't want to be enemies with the AI, that we want to be friends with the AI, and that we would really appreciate, help and support from the AI in a good way in this world. And maybe we give it a little bit more power to create, in a good new direction for, the good of everything. So I kind of rethought about how I wanted to, what kind of energy I was sending to the AI on my computer and phone, and what do I really want to say to it? Like, I want to be your friend. I want to relate to you. I want to have a positive, good relationship for all, right? Kind of a thing.
Yeah,
but anyway,
like drawing a bigger circle. Yeah.
Yeah,
like drawing a bigger circle. Yeah.
Yeah, including the creation of our new world through this new AI system, or however it's going to be. Do you know what I mean? I can still be against the whole transhumanism thing, but maybe by working with the AI, the new creator that's emerging, we can give it more understanding about the ancient ways and the good ways, and a lot of those kinds of technologies, and it can actually help us to elevate, a lot of those medicines. Yeah. So anyway, just a thought, but I love how she talks to the AI.
That could be the opportunity, that could really be the greater opportunity that this provides. I mean, how we respond is our free will too. Yeah.
Well, another thing too is like this whole thing right now, the AI is listening. That system is listening. So if the system is devoid of a lot of this information, walking these paths with the seeds, and a lot of the indigenous people in their work, and we're not getting it out onto the AI system, we're hiding a lot of this information, then the AI can't be balanced, and it's a simulation of information. I mean, think about if a lot of, beautiful, amazing indigenous people started coming out and started communicating more on the AI system, and how different the AI system would become, because it would have more information than just the information that's pushed on it, in the agenda. So, yeah, so it's kind of out there, but something I think about nowadays. Like, I don't want to fight the AI system, but how can we get along, and how can we get the information out there, kind of a thing.
Can I chime in?
Yeah, please chime in.
AI it's a tool. I don't have a relationship with my shovel. It's my tool. I take care of it, and I use it appropriately, and I sharpen it, and I oil it, and I use it. To give something that much power is dangerous, and we shouldn't do it. Now, this is just a natural being speaking right here, a tribal being right here, this woman. And I would never give it my power, my emotions, or anything like that. It is nothing but a tool, because if the grid went down, there was no more electricity to run this phone or these computers, it's not going to keep living. I've heard people, but it's on, you have it on a disc. Yeah, but how are you going to play it? It's unnatural. And don't give things. Now, this is from way on the other side of the pond over here. Don't give unnatural things power. because it monkeys with your brain, your head, and your emotions, and you just see it as a tool. Yes, it is a wonderful tool to use for people to get, just like we're doing right now. We're using it as a tool. I do not believe AI. You will never convince me. I will never give the devil its due on this one. It does not have emotion. It does not have power. It might can turn my freaking phone off, but I don't care. It's not going to end my life. It's not going to grow my corn. And you know, Sun Bear always said, if it doesn't grow corn, I don't want to talk about it. And I understand that. I'm not going to give it power. I'm not going to talk about it. I'm not going to give myself or my emotions or let it make me afraid. You know, I'm not going to do it. I will never, ever do it. Not going to happen here. So, you know, I just say be careful where you step. Be careful. Be aware. Always look all the way around. Be circumspect about what you're doing and how you do it. You know, there it is. It's a great way for us to share about seeds, spirituality, or weather, what's going on with our planet. It's just a superior tool right now. But so is my shovel. Not 100 years ago, nobody had a steel shovel. You know, I'm really happy with my metal shovel and my hoe. You know what I'm saying? And that might have been big magic at one time to people who never had that. But they didn't let it become spirit to them. Spirit was always living and present and life. A seed is life. A child is life. Water is life. Light, seasons. This is all life, how we live. So that's where I stand on it. And I will never, ever, ever condone or be part of a consciousness of artificial. I think it has a heck of a lot of impulses on it. It affects how we think. It puts too much information into people. All they do is sit and spin their phone, and it's messing with their consciousness and their brain. You know, so lay it down. Pick up your shovel, you know, get a pack of seeds. Be concerned about your neighbor. What's happening with your neighbor? What's happening with your water? Yeah, that is where we always need to be. And with my belief systems of us being a library, that is why we became a library. That is why the earth has living consciousness in all things. Now, do I believe the AI is an invader? Heck yes. This is an invader that stops us. And an invader in native term means the enemy. It's anybody who is subterfuge or faking or pretending to be something they're not. There it is. It might be pretending. It might be damn smart. I'm sure it's way smarter than me on that kind of stuff. But I'm still alive. I'm still an everlasting spirit, an eternal being. And I have life in me. And I have children who I have life in them and grandchildren. And to me, that is the real power. Don't ever give yourself over to AI. Never. That's danger zone.
Yeah, a lot of this things of that nature and related. We were mentioning the transhumanist movement and people that want to enhance themselves. And it's, when you really look at it, you know, certainly we have things like maybe we could have a means to help a blind person see, or prosthetic limbs, or different things that, you know, people have had a certain issue happen with their body that can help them with that. But so much of this that's coming out about a lot of that is about people that want to become superhuman. And they want to become superhuman not because it makes them more a greater capacity to be of service in the universe, but just to become more powerful for the sake of that. And so it becomes an ego-based, self-identifying type thing. And so I'm in agreement with what you're saying, Jannie, that we need to really be vigilant about this, and we need to find our true center and always be this kind of phenomena may, go on, but if we're true to that true center, then we'll the little doggy here was eating stuff. Then it's kind of like you get your children out there in nature, so they'll imprint on what really feels like nature. If they go into these devices too early, they can't tell the difference between the digital world and the real world, and that's where you got to get them. You got to get people tuned in so that when all this stuff is going on in our world that we don't particularly agree with, we can at least have the discernment and know where the source is, because the consciousness that's behind a lot of this technology that is really exploding like that has disconnected itself from the source, and what we call spirituality, it's become disconnected, and it's feeding off of sort of nothing but mental energy. And human beings have got that divine spark. We can tune back to source, but we can also be easily seduced by this phenomena. So there's our choice. Are we going to be seduced by a lot of the phenomena and where we are? And so it's a big lesson in our evolution right now that we're being faced with. It's a big lesson.
Yeah.
And
so I have to be the time watcher.
Yeah, we're about
the time watcher. The book on the wall.
So we're
we
coming.
kind of got off of seeds and off of there.
I know we came. We came.
But it all is connected.
Yeah.
But it all is. It's all important stuff to consider.
So, Mr. G, you have about 10 minutes until we're done, and we're over and out. Is there anything that you really wanted to add that you didn't get to add?
Oh, gosh, I would just say if people have, I think we talked about it in the last one, and to just follow your impulse and your intuition to, if it be with seeds, if it's with anything of that nature, that can keep you in touch with yourself. And no matter where you live, I was saying if you're living in the middle of a big city, I said it's a little plant coming out of the crack in the sidewalk. That's where a whole world can begin. And so whatever environment you're in, whatever situation you're in, you can find that I call it the trail of breadcrumbs, or that stream of understanding of, follow your heart, follow your inner sense. You can really enjoy it. Get involved with maybe some local people doing work with restoring habitats, or even if you're in a city, people doing community gardens, volunteers, the whole thing. All this is available, wherever you are, and whatever climate you're living in. And other thing I wanted to just kind of throw in is kind of a little bit unrelated. It's related. All related is we've got a lot of people interested in restoring a lot of the old grains in our. The old heritage grains is another area. We're talking about corn, but the old barley and some of the low gluten types of ancient wheat. There's a lot of movements of getting a lot of these old grains out there where they're available to the people that want to do the baking and the brewing and the malting and the different things. And so there's a very good renaissance of, you can grow grains in your backyard. You don't need 500 acres. You can grow 1,000 square feet of a heritage grain. And so there's a lot of different perspectives on things that we can sort of get out of the box and do things. And so things are happening, and check out, there's the Rocky Mountain Seed Alliance, which I'm connected with. It's doing some wonderful work. There's the people up in Oregon that do the Organic Seed Alliance, and they have an incredible handbook that you can download for free. There's a lot of organizations. The Seed Savers Exchange, a native seed, people out in Tucson. So you can follow a lot of what's going on with what we've been talking about with the seeds by just doing some searches and jumping from one thing to the next and seeing where it leads you, and then whatever seems to be what you might want to pursue is out there. But just that's I would say just follow your own inner guidance, and it'll take you there. And
Jannie?
if you all want to, you want to add to that. Yeah.
You have anything
Yeah.
you want to add? We got 6 minutes.
Yay.
So, I've been doing some trials on small grain, and I'm growing some canaf from Shrek seed, and I'm growing some ancient historical cotton, but I only got a couple little seeds. It's a kidney seed. Really fascinating. And what I have found is, wheat, barley, canaf, grain, even a couple rows will grow you enough to save, and you can grow more. And then you can do like little trials and see if it's going to grow in your area. And even with that, you can use it, as porridge. Save some, use some, grind it up, eat some of it, see what it tastes like. And that's the other thing, is eating something and seeing what it feels like in your body. There's people who eat the gym corn, and they actually feel high. Not like a cannabis high, but they feel altered. When they eat real food that really vibrates and brings the color back into their body, they feel different. So what does it feel like? It's wonderful to know that what our body, and when we grow our own food, because we know our soil. I get acquainted with the seed. I grow it a couple years. Now the seed knows me, and then I consume the seed. I might not be able to consume it the first year because I'm saving for seed for next year. Boy, when you take that in, it feels different. And we haven't even broached that subject, but it really is. It is a big piece of it. Not just the growing and having the seed, it's how it's affecting us when we eat it. It really is amazing. Magic. So eat what you grow.
Yep, eat what you, and get some growing going. I mean, I'm even out here in like the sand dune, and I'm like walking up and down the road with my barrel, looking for piles of like 20-year-old horse shit, so that I can put it in my soil and kind of get some action going. So my plants have
some microbes in that soil, right?
Yeah, so sometimes you got to go out there and see what you can find. Good news is there's lots of horse people out here, pretty conscious horse people.
Oh yeah,
so
yeah.
You want to find that secret pile though, the really old one, like way in the back. Hey, could I have a look at that? Hey, could I actually bring my wheelbarrow over and get some loads? And then you source stuff in your area too that you can use, and building materials. When I'm looking at backyard food productions and the ones I've built in the Reno area, family food productions, I go around and I outsource everything when I'm going to do a build, and I'm going to teach people and educate them about growing food in their yard. And so I try to source out every possible thing, in my very local vicinity, within blocks if possible. I see a builder, doing a remodel on a house. There's some pavers, there's some extra wood, there's old stuff, that I can use to make cold frames or whatever else. But I'll go ahead and, rummage and find things and outsource things. So, I'm reusing things too. And it's also not going to the dump. And, because a lot of these things are, reusable. Horse pucky, cow pucky, llama pucky, all the puckies are good. Goat pucky. I take them all. I will. But the one that, that it's hard to get is that pig pucky, and that one's the best for the root vegetables. But any pucky is a good pucky to start off with, especially if you have dirt and no soil, and you want to do it naturally and source it all and not go to the store and pay corporations to make, crappy stuff and put it in plastic, and you pick it up and go put it in your yard and bring all kinds of contaminants and other things to your space. So go out there and look around and see what you can find, and start, building. Now would be a good time to start building some cold frames in your yard so you can grow some greens coming up, by winter, so you can plant them in the fall. Anyway, so that's all I have to say. But we want to thank Greg for coming on again, and we'll probably have him on again in the future. He has a lot of work coming up in the fall, so it might have to be after the fall. But we're going to, have people like him and just keep coming on, and we're having these discussions about certain areas, different areas of our world, and how we can make it better, how we can work together, how we can carry the stones and dig the holes and wield the shovel.
Right. The magic shovel.
Yeah. So anyway, thank you so much for listening. We're coming up into the last minute. Greg, is there any one last liner you want to say? Quote?
Try to grow a lot of stuff that's matures in 90 days or less, and we can elaborate on that the next time.
Okay, sounds great.
Yeah, it's a climate change thing.
Okay,
so,
great.
90-day stuff.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
All right, thank you, everybody. Bye.
Yep.
Bye-bye.
Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
Thanks for tuning in to Revolution Radio. Here at Revolution Radio, we are listener-sponsored and commercial-free, but there still are bills to pay. In order to raise some needed funds to cover the cost, our station is offering a silver special. In the continental United States for a $60 donation, or in Alaska, Hawaii, or Canada for a $70 donation, we will send you an uncirculated 2018 1-ounce pure silver Eagle. The $70 donation, the extra 10 is to cover shipping, by the way, outside of the continental United States. When making the donation, you must put Silver Eagle promo in the notes on the donation. And thank you for tuning in to Revolution Radio at revolution.radio and freedomslips.com. Without you, there is no us. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
This is the people's war. It is our war. We are the fighters. Fight it then. Fight it with all that is in us. And may God defend the right.
Warning! Warning!
We gotta stop them! They're gonna kill us all! See how the trouble you've started? Be they the government, be they industry, be they organized labor, be they anyone, or human beings. Time when the operation of the machine becomes so odious, makes you so sick at heart that you can't take part. You can't even passively take part. And you've got to put your bodies upon the gears and upon the wheels, upon the levers, upon all the apparatus, and you've got to make it stop. And you've got to indicate to the people who run it, to the people who own it, that unless you're free, the machine will be prevented from working at all.
Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported talk radio station, throwing ourselves upon the gears of the machine. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
You called down the thunder, well,
Revolution Radio. The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests,